Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And imagine our lack of surprise
Right?
at J.J. Abrams admitting that he didn't have a plan.
Yeah, we were going to do this one yesterday, but we were too busy trying to get the skunk smell out of our studio.
And I'm waiting for all the jokes. Yeah, we actually had a skunk move underneath our studio. We do rent a separate office building, and the skunk decided it was going to move in, so we had to clean up the studio.
So it's a good news. The good news is the books weren't in yet, so everything's fine.
But hey, it doesn't stink as bad as The Last Jedi.
Yes. Very nice. There we go. Nice transition there. Yes.
All right, so we're going to talk about this and some other stuff in relation to the current state of Star Wars. There are a lot of rumors flying around that Disney's trying to course correct and all that jazz. We don't know what's going to happen, but the one thing I think everybody can agree on, even the mainstream media now, is that there was no plan for the sequel trilogy.
I know, right? It's almost like a lot of people said that for years. You know, it's almost like people have been saying it. And it was funny because people who said it took so much shit for it. And then there is, especially when the ones who loved The Last Jedi, until the Rise of Skywalker came out and they walked back The Last Jedi. Then they were like, there's no plan. And it's like, no shit, Sherlock. We've been saying this.
But you weren't allowed to say anything about it because, Disney was probably lining the pockets of a lot of these websites. So their job was to go out and promote the Disney trilogy. Plus, they were getting a lot of hits, rage bait hits, from a lot of salty Star Wars fans. So I really think they were trying to stoke the outrage.
Yeah.
And milk it as long as they could.
But we've said since, really early on.
Oh, yeah.
That there was no plan. Like, as soon as we saw Last Jedi, that we're like, nope, there's no plan.
Yeah, because, Abrams set all this stuff up in the first movie, and then they either discarded it or walked it back or whatever in Rian Johnson's movie. And it's like, clearly there was no plan. So pretty much all the threads have been tied off by the end of The Last Jedi. Mm-hmm. And they had to untie them and open them up again and bring in Palpatine in The Rise of Skywalker just because they offed Snoke in a stupid way and everything else.
And even when he talks in his interview, he kind of blames on, well, there's changes in directors and all that crap. It's like, that's not what it was. Because there was different directors in each of the original trilogy movies too, for the most part. But we had somebody overseeing all of it. And you can get away with it with the original trilogy because they're kind of like making it up as they went. So that was okay for the original. But when you're coming back years later and there's all kinds of stuff established in books and different things like that, even Disney tried to say it doesn't count now. There are certain, things that people expect, and one of them is, you need to have a clear plan where you're going. And there clearly was not a plan.
Yeah, so before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We're over 191,000 subs. We do talk about Star Wars, not as much as we used to, because frankly, we're losing interest in it. I still
love my Ewoks.
You do love your Ewoks, but the behind-the-scenes drama is actually more interesting than what's going on with Disney Star Wars itself right now. We do talk about general pop culture and all of that, and we've said pretty much from the beginning. I mean, Kathleen Kennedy had one job, and that was to be the overseer of the sequel trilogy, which was at the time the most important thing, one of the most important things Disney had going for them, because they had to reestablish the Star Wars brand, and they dropped the damn ball.
I know, it's in a ridiculous way. It's been awful. I mean, and then the media, like you said, did not help matters.
No, and how hard is it to just get a couple of Post-it notes and say, this is basically what happens in the first movie, basically the second movie, basically the third.
Haven't people said, I mean, granted, you couldn't have had every director there, but it didn't matter. The people that were overseeing it could told a director, here's where we're going with this. We need to, work with what the parameters of where it's going. We know that this is the first point, major point, second major point, third major point, work within these parameters. That's what they do for franchises all the damn time.
I still can't tell you what the overall plot of the sequel trilogy is.
I have no idea. Luke sucks. Men suck. That's about it. Our characters are the bestest. And it's all because we had to undo the old to redo it so we can say we broke glass ceilings and all that crap. That's what it is.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Yes, I mean, because you need a bad guy. Who do they like? Oh, they like the Emperor. Oh, let's do that.
Oh, God.
And it's just, we've been calling this shit for years. We've taken so much crap for it too.
A lot of people have been, and the media demonized them. And what's
the same media who's now turning on Disney.
Yeah,
now they aren't getting the access and the cupcakes and all that.
This is coming from Ars Technica, who got from Collider. They did an interview with J.J. Abrams. If 3 years ago, they would have gotten slammed and been like, oh my God, you're siding with the alt-right Nazis. They must be a Nazi site. And now it's like, yeah, everybody knows it. It just shows how out of vogue the sequel trilogy is already and how badly it's aged.
But what the bad thing is, on the Disney park side of it, at least, we're seeing things like, plans for like the Star Cruiser Hotel and stuff. They're going to double down on they're allegedly doubling down on the Kylo Ren and Rey thing again. And it's like, you already failed. Just stop. Just, let's stop this and let's let it die. Kill it if you have to. Just, let's move on. Let's move on to something better. High Republic is clearly not it.
It's coming from Ars Technica. J.J. Abrams' lack of plan in Star Wars' latest trilogy was a critical flaw.
No shit.
And you want to put this guy in charge of DC?
Well, no, go ahead, by all means.
Hindsight is 20/20. There's nothing more important than knowing where you're going. Again, how effing hard is it to just write a couple of notes on
we literally
Post-its.
had a whole wall of Post-its before for something we were working on because we had to know where we were going. And from the get-go, I've said this. And the reason I said it is because as somebody who writes books, who writes, different things and has written different projects, you need to know, here's the main, usually three arcs in the story. Here's the main points. Here's what we're starting. Here's where we're going. Here's might be a couple big plot points in between, and you can work around that. But you need to know those things up front, especially when you have different people working on it.
So this interview actually, I guess, is going to be part of the 10th anniversary of Super 8. Collider released an excerpt on Wednesday focusing on his directing and co-writing work on both episodes 7 and 9. The takeaway seems loud and clear. The new trilogy as a whole, which he bookended, would have benefited from consistency.
Everybody's mad because it's like, no, we all said it and we got so much shit for it.
Abrams' quotes in isolation may sound like he's speaking about the entirety of his career, but they're specifically in response to Collider's questions about the director and writer handoff between his entries in the Rey trilogy. His first answer includes a bigger picture estimation about best laid plans, hinting to issues with a single actor when a relationship as written doesn't quite work.
Well, the next thing is, it's funny they're calling it the Rey trilogy. I thought they always call it the it's the Skywalker trilogy. Oh, but this is the Rey trilogy part of it.
The Apocrypha.
As you
Apocrypha. That's what I call it. It is easily discarded. It's not important to the Skywalker story. By contrast, other things that you think, oh, that's a small moment, or that's a one-episode character, suddenly become hugely important to the story, yada, yada. These are his exact quotes. You have to plan things as best you can, and you always need to be able to respond to the unexpected. And the unexpected can come in all sorts of forms. And I do think that there's nothing more important than knowing where you're going.
Yeah, well then, why didn't you guys do that?
Usually in writing, this is writing 101. This is why I'm like, why are they throwing like $500 million at this guy? Mm-hmm. Writing 101 is you work the ending out first. What's the purpose of your story?
But the thing is, you can't put all the blame on him on this. At the end of the day, it was Kathleen Kennedy who was supposed to oversee all of that. Because the directors were going to change, and he wasn't even going to come back for the third one. Yeah. So knowing that it was going to have different directors, knowing that you were going to have it done that way, ultimately, it was up to her to be like, well, I'm sitting down, I'm telling you, these are the main plot points we've decided on. You need to follow within that. So yeah, it's his fault to a point. And I think that's why the last Rise of Skywalker movie tries to put it back on track for what he kind of wanted, because it's clear that there was no, meeting of the minds here between the first and second one.
No, and even, Rian Johnson, as I understand it, was already writing episode 8.
Before they even had the 7 done.
Yeah.
So he didn't even know what the flip was going to happen.
Now, that would work if you had a clear plan for what was going to happen.
Someone overseeing it.
Right. And be like, okay, well, here's a part of the story where XYZ thing happens, and then we're going to bring somebody else in for, these other plot points. But again, when you don't have a roadmap.
It sounds like the only roadmap they were given, a mandate they were given, was Luke Skywalker bad, girl power.
A teenager writing a fanfic on Tumblr has a better idea of where they're going than apparently J.J. Abrams and Disney. I'm just, and this is a complaint a lot of people have about J.J. Abrams, is he's good at setting up questions, but he's very poor at delivering satisfying answers. Lost.
Well, I think that's why they had him for the first movie. They weren't going to have him for the last one. And then he had to come back for the last one because, you know, Colin Trevorrow, you know, whatever happened there.
Colin Trevorrow happened. Actually, his version of the story, I mean, he just kind of picked up from where Rian Johnson left off. But I think it would have been, I'm going to be honest, I think it would have been a more interesting movie because it did seem like, I mean, he even had a place for Hux, and he had, you know, versus Hux just getting off stupidly. Like, it explained why Hux hated Kylo Ren as much as he did and all this other stuff that would have actually probably worked out well. But no, let's just bring Palpatine back and, you know, walk back a bunch of stuff. What
it reminds me of is those things you do with your kids at night. We used to do with our kids. Once upon a time, and then they take the story and then like one kid will say one thing, and then but then this happened, and then the parent comes in. Oh, and this happened, and then the kids, and this happened, and that's what it sounds like. It sounds like one of those stories you make up with your kids, where everybody gets a turn to add to the bedtime stories.
Oh my God, it's bedtime stories.
Yeah.
Disney's Star Wars Sequel Trilogy is bedtime stories.
It just stays on brand.
Okay, he said he's careful to admit that a specific plan doesn't necessarily guarantee success, especially when we weren't allowed to execute ideas the way we want to. Oh, is he throwing Disney under the bus?
No, I'm sure he's not wrong.
He doesn't clarify whether he means an issue where the House of Mouse shot down a Star Wars-related plan of his own. We know at least one case where that happened with Solo. When pressed on what's better, plan or no plan, Abrams picks plan, telling Collider, having a plan, I've learned, in some cases, the hard way, it's not his money, he doesn't give a shit, is the most critical thing, because otherwise you don't know what you're setting up. You don't know what to emphasize, because if you don't know the inevitable end of the story, you're just as good as your last sequence or effect or joke or whatever, but you want to be leading to something inevitable. Oh my God, this is writing 101.
I know, that's what we've been saying. I think the first time I mentioned it all, I said writing 101 states. You know, here's the thing too, though. At the end of the day, all these projects are bringing up the fact about the Solo. It's always been creative differences and issues where people keep getting gone in the middle of it or before it starts or like towards the end, and somebody else has to come in and fix it. All related to Kathleen Kennedy. I'm just saying she was the overseer, and there's so many cases in Lucasfilm particularly where stuff had to change because suddenly creative differences.
So this person clearly is a Rian Johnson fan. We'll talk about where Rian Johnson is these days. But he said, in Star Wars' case, the inevitable ending turned out to be a, spoiler alert, surprise rebirth of Palpatine to create a final form villain and an about-face from The Last Jedi's intriguing allegation about Rey's origin.
It wasn't intriguing. It was just a lot of people wanted to like the idea of, oh, it's a nobody because it's like the socialism of the Force.
It's like anybody can be a Jedi. Even though they made a big deal about who Luke's father was.
Right, you couldn't be, that wasn't the case. So, basically, I stand by what I'm comparing it to, socialism of the Force.
There we go. So that's going to be episode 10.
Mm-hmm. The socialism of the Force.
Socialism of the Force. And then the very first line is somehow Palpatine returned.
Because there's a whole generation of people who just want to be given something because they're them.
With Colin Trevorrow departing episode 9 before it began production in earnest, Abrams' return saw him steer the Rey trilogy back toward his own apparent vision, jettisoning the logic.
The logic
and the build-up. The build-up that came from Rian Johnson's directorial pivot approach.
Oh my God, it was terrible. There was no direction or logic. You basically took all the things that were set up in the first one and completely threw them out the window for no reason. And Rey's nobody. That's what the whole point is. She's the bestest ever, but she's a nobody. So everybody who feels like they're a nobody can feel better about themselves. That's basically the point.
My own episode, so this is where they toot their own home. My own episode 9 review called this issue out after praising its best moments and its 2 stellar lead performances.
Where is there stellar lead performances? I don't
Reylo.
see. What, because they're looking at each other, he's got his shirt off and it was a running joke? I don't even read this shit. I don't even care.
Rise of Skywalker, is proof that J.J. Abrams
basically
was
this guy talking about how he loves Rise of Skywalker and he's pissed. So his whole article's biased. The whole interview, or the whole article's biased to begin with about the interview.
things are looking good for Rian Johnson. He's getting more Knives Out again.
Well, it's funny because Rian Johnson was pointed out many times, guys. It's like he makes sure he keeps popping up in Star Wars. Oh, don't forget about me. Oh, Star Wars trilogy, which of course Disney has not confirmed in any way, but he keeps popping up. Now I know back channel from things I've heard, Disney, seems to blame a lot of the failure on Star Wars on Rian Johnson. So I don't know if they're. I mean, they're gonna do some dumb things, but giving him a trilogy at this point would be colossally dumb. And now here he comes every so often. Here he pops back up and being like, oh, look, don't forget about me, Star Wars.
I think here's my take on Rian. I think Rian Johnson is okay if he's doing his own thing.
I think so too. I think Rian Johnson doing Rian Johnson films is okay.
Rian Johnson doing Rian Johnson. Ryan on Ryan action. That's totally fine. I mean,
agree.
His cinematography is good. I will say that The Last Jedi, for all, as much as I despise the movie for what it did to Luke Skywalker, it is probably the prettiest Star Wars movie. I mean, there's some visuals in there that are really nice, and the shots are really nice. And that's about the only thing nice I can say about
I say it with books and stuff and comics and stuff too. Doesn't matter how pretty it is, the story's shit. It's still going to be shit. And he's really, really good at doing his own thing. But because what he does, his style works for that. When you're putting him on something that's completely tonally, thematically, different than what he usually works on, instead of he can't seem to try to fit. It's like what we see with the comics anymore with these writers. Instead of trying to make the characters be themselves, they try to change it to be them.
Yeah.
And you can't do that with established characters in a franchise like this. And that's where, it doesn't work. You had people with the first one, and then by the end of this one, a lot of people tuned out. They're like, what the fuck just happened? Sorry.
Yeah. Well, comicbook.com said that fans of The Last Jedi have been eager to see Johnson.
All three of them.
Johnson return to the wide world of Star Wars. In fact, he told Soraya Wilson
again. What? I called bullshit on this interview. She's been leaking exposing parts of this interview for months. How long was this damn interview?
I think it was probably about a half an hour, and she'd milked it for months. Yeah, Rian Johnson said he was dying to do an episode, but it was all about scheduling. Yeah.
Wait, so he's not doing one? I know he was calling trying to get one.
Yeah, well, now he's doing Knives Out, too. They should just call it Knives Out again. More Knives Out.
It might have been a case of Filoni, because I think Filoni, up to him, he would have given it to him because Ryan helped Filoni out, which was very nice. I mean, I will give Rian Johnson that. I always appreciate someone who takes time to help somebody else who wants to learn to do something where other directors didn't have the time to do it. He made time. So I will give him props for that. But, and I think Filoni would probably let him. I just don't know if Disney would let him.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people to blame, but ultimately the responsibility was Kathleen Kennedy's, like you said, to make sure that Rian Johnson didn't go off the rails. I mean, was she even looking at what he was doing, or is she just like, yeah, I like this guy, he can do whatever the hell he wants?
I don't know what she was
whatever
thinking.
He wants.
I don't know what I don't even try to understand what happened here, because my brain cannot process it, because I'm just like, and all logic and that I understand it makes zero sense to me, so I'm not the one to ask.
Well, now there's talk too about Zack Snyder.
Yeah, remember we did a video. He thought, I wouldn't do Star Wars. Well, now they're saying that he's still trying to do a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
I mean, now who knows if it's true or not?
Well, okay, so just speculation on my part is that because of the Warner Media debacle, it seems like he's not wanted at Warner, so maybe he is willing to give the mouse a chance. Before, he was like, yeah, I don't want anything to do with Star Wars. Now he's like, well,
no, he was into Star Wars, and they said he didn't want to do it because he didn't think he'd be a good fit, and now here he comes again.
It's like, well, if I can't do the Snyderverse,
that he wants to do a seven samurai inspired, which actually makes sense.
That would work. Because
the Star Wars, the original trilogies were inspired with samurai films version of the movie.
Oh, wait. In 2013, they reported on it.
That was his first time it was brought up. This movie, that's when everybody keeps talking about that he was supposed to be thinking about doing. And now they're bringing it up again.
So, I mean, they might actually.
I don't know. It just seems funny they're pulling this out now.
Yeah.
I think this is called What Gets Hit? Zack Snyder and Star Wars. Quick.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. This is CBR, guys. This is one of these news outlets desperately needs They're basically a content farm. I mean, I don't even know how many articles a day CBR puts out. They must put out like 100 articles a day.
He said we talked about it, but it never happened. I've been working on it away from the Star Wars universe on my own as a sci-fi thing. It's still a sci-fi thing. It's the same story. Now I'm just going to let Star Wars be Star Wars. Well, so he's not saying that, but he's still working on the idea he had for Star Wars. Well, and, just like...
Maybe we need new stuff inspired by old stuff again, because it would come full circle, because Seven Samurai did inspire George Lucas.
Right. But he's saying that now his project no longer a go, but he's working on to make it someday as a standalone film. But they had to bring this into this too, because right now, hurry up, Star Wars, Zack Snyder, who's already said I'm not going to work on Star Wars. Now the CBR is trying to make a headline about it. It's like, and then Rian Johnson's like, don't forget about me in Star Wars.
Yeah, and then
it's just like, you're sitting back with popcorn being like, what the hell?
What they're going to do is people are going to start coming up with stories like Rian Johnson, Gina Carano, Zack Snyder, and, more. Walked into a bar. Here's the punchline. Click to find out the punchline.
Right. Disney, and here's what Disney did about it, and stuff like that, because it's... the whole thing is dumb. Everybody keeps trying to vie for don't forget about me, Star Wars. And it's just, I think most people have already tuned out. They don't care about this shit anymore. They just want to know what's happening next. And if we get more of the same, you're going to lose more money.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And, again, we're hearing rumors that Disney's trying to right the ship with Star Wars, and that's probably a Bob Chapek thing, because Bob Iger was all about,
And apparently he's in the minis too, but I mean, I'm hearing different things. There's different rumors going around. Our own sources said there's a meeting coming up about KK and Indiana Jones and some issues there, so I don't know. But, the whole thing is just, is this a mess? And, Abrams is now coming out and saying what we've said the entire time. So let me save you some trouble, Disney. Maybe just listen to the fans. It worked for Sonic. It worked for other things. If you just listen to the fans and try to make decent things that, make sense in the universe, people won't be so pissed. And have a plan, because, that's what you do for pretty much everything.
Yeah, right. All right. So we're going to wrap this one up.
Yep.
Okay, so please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.
Bye.